Welcome to As the Lock Turns, where we talk to locksmiths and industry insiders about all things locksmithing to help you keep your customers safe, one door at a time. Hey everybody, welcome to As the Lock Turns. My name is Cory. I am the owner of Tarriverlock and Key in Eastern North Carolina. I am a locksmith and a certified fire door inspector, and today we are starting part one of a multi-part series discussing fire doors, fire door assemblies, fire door inspections, and why all of these are important to keeping you safe, your facility safe, and people safe. Today we're going to start with, well, what is a fire door assembly? We're going to go through the anatomy of a fire door assembly, discuss the various components, and why they're important to keeping you safe one door at a time. So let's get started in talking about what is the anatomy of a fire door or fire door assembly. Well, first let's go with some of the more obvious components of a fire door assembly. First and foremost would be the door or the door leaf. It is a fire-rated door which is fitted with compatible fire-rated components. And then it's also fitted to ensure sufficient gaps between the door leaf and the frame when the door closes. If those gaps are too big and or too small, if they're too big, let's start there, then fire and smoke could actually come in and around the door and make the door not do its job. If they're too tight, the door may drag or not even close in case of a fire. So you got to make sure those gaps are set appropriately to keep people safe. Secondly is the frame. Obviously, that's the other major component that most people are going to see because they actually walk through that frame when they come through the door. The frame is tested and certified to work with the fire door itself. The correct fire-rated material and dimensions are installed for the opening that it is spec'd for. It is securely finished on top of that. Now, a door and the frames for fire doors also must have the proper labels installed on them. The labels must be clearly visible and legible, and it must also notate the fire rating for the door or the frame. Now, many times there may be other notes on that discussing the throw of the latch that is required for that assembly, whether or not that assembly can use an exit device or not. So there's some extra information that may or may not be on that label also. Now, importantly, that label must be clearly visible and legible. Many times, I'm sure as you have seen, people will come through, paint a facility, and they paint right over the fire door label or the fire door frame labeling, making them impossible to read in many cases. That voids basically the rating of the door. If I can't read it as a fire door inspector, I don't know if it's meeting code. NFP 80 specifications require, or codes require, that those labels are clearly visible. So if you are going to have your facility painted, for example, make sure your painter understands not to paint over those labels. They are required to be legible for it to meet codes. Now, some of the other components may or may not be on all fire door assemblies, but we'll go through them anyway. One of those pieces would be a coordinator. A coordinator helps to coordinate, kind of like the name implies, the sequence of the doors closing. The inactive door needs to close first, and then the active leaf must close behind it. Normally this is used on double door openings that are fire rated due to each leaf required to be self-latching and self-closing. Now I'm going to give you an example that I ran into, not as a fire door inspector, but I was just at a conference which was in a hotel. I came out of the restroom, walked down the hallway, and when I looked up, the inactive leaf on this door had no latching bolts installed in it. They were never installed. The door was prepped for it. The holes were there, the mortises were there, but there were no bolts installed. So upon further inspection, there was also no coordinator installed. So when the fire alarm went off, these doors would not close properly, or may not close properly. Even if they did, even if that coordinator was installed, it really doesn't matter because the inactive leaf had nothing to keep it shut. Fire would blow right on through these doors and would not keep people safe on that floor of the building, and possibly other floors depending on what was happening with the fire. So a coordinator is very important on a double door fire assembly so that the doors close properly and then so that they are secured in case of a fire. Now, a door closer, which also works in conjunction with coordinators, must also be fire rated. It must be fitted with the correct intumescent protection and hardware. Also, it must be adjusted to ensure that the door closes snugly against the frame and that the door easily operates. So the closer must First and foremost, make sure the door closes against the frame. That tight seal helps protect people in case of a fire. It also must do that to make sure that the door latches properly. If the door is not latched, again, the fire can blow right on through there. Also, it has to open and close easily. So just in regular operation, it must meet ADA requirements for people who need to come in and out of that door. So that door closer has to be adjusted properly to keep people safe, but also to work in its daily function as people enter and leave through that door. Now, some doors and fire door assemblies may have fire and smoke seals. They're not always going to be spec'd for it, so it's going to depend upon the facility in particular. Now, the fire and smoke seals offer a full perimeter seal, top, bottom, and sides. The seals must be made with the correct material and to the manufacturer's size and specification for the assembly. So if, say you have the smoke seals or a fire seal and it's torn or ripped and needs to be replaced, make sure that you replace it with the correct size. If you don't have the correct size, it's not going to function properly. Also, it must match the fire rating of the fire door leaf. Again, if the fire door is rated, for example, for 3 hours, and you install a fire and smoke seal that's only rated for an hour, it's not going to match. It's not going to allow the fire door assembly to function properly because the ratings are not the same. Also, smoke seals gaps between the door and the frame. When closed, it seals off that entire perimeter of the fire door leaf. That helps keep smoke from seeping in and around the door into other parts of the building. Well, hinges. Got to open and close the door somehow. The hinges must be suitable for use on the fire door with the correct identification markings. It must be fitted with the correct fire-rated hardware, and it must be fitted in the correct location on the fire doors. I've seen many situations where a fire door assembly is designed for hinges that standard hinges alongside the door and the frame, and maybe the door starts sagging, it doesn't start working properly, the frame gets out of alignment, and instead of fixing the frame and so forth, they just pull those hinges off. They'll put a continuous hinge in its place, which it was not spec'd for. You got to make sure that the hinges are fitted correctly and in the right locations on the door and the frame. Also, windows are a part of a fire door assembly or a vision panel. They must be fitted using all of the correct components. Fire-rated glass, glazing beads, and so forth, all must be installed properly. Must be fitted in the correct location and not exceeding any size limitations of the door. So you can't make the window bigger if the door is not designed for a bigger window. No broken or exposed areas in the glass, because that will allow smoke or fire to get through the door quicker. And no broken seals. If the seal is cracked or broken, it needs to be resealed by somebody certified to do that. A fire door may have a kick plate at the bottom of the door. It's not to exceed 16 inches tall, and it must be properly installed to function as it should. Threshold seals is a seal suitable for use on specific fire door leafs. A smoke seal must completely fill the gap when the door is closed. Again, not every door has a threshold seal. It's going to depend on what was spec'd for that particular facility and or fire door assembly. Lock or latch. The lock or the latch must be compatible for use on specific fire doors. It must be designed for that door. It must be fitted with the correct fire-rated components, and it must be fitted in the correct location per the manufacturer's location on the fire door certificate. So if the door is designed for a mortise lock, you must use a mortise lock. If it's designed for a board lock, you must use a board lock. If it is designed for an exit device, and the correct specific components for that exit device, it must be installed that way. For example, I ran across a fire door that had an exit device. The fire door label said, hey, this is designed for an exit device. The exit device itself was fire rated, and the door was prepped for the exit device to use a handle through the door. It was bored for a handle to attach to the exit device. I don't know what happened, but that's not how it was installed. And from what I can tell, it was never installed that way. The cover plates for that hole are still on that door, or were still on that door. I'm hoping they fixed it by now. And instead of using the appropriate lever trim along with the key cylinder inside to lock and unlock that door, they went ahead and just bored another hole, used a pull handle and a rim cylinder. They put some washers on the back side of the door to keep the exit device further from the door, so that they didn't have to trim the tailpiece on that rim cylinder. Now, does the door open and close? Yes, it does. Does it meet fire code? Not by any chance. that big hole still sits in the middle of that door, which is not designed to have. It's designed to be filled with that exit device and trim. It doesn't meet code. You can't adjust or change things in field like that and against what is spec'd for the door. That was something when I saw that it was like, oh my goodness, and we wrote it up. It did not pass inspection. So also along with that, with fire door assemblies, you can't make modifications in field, for example, or modifications to specific components. Again, using a continuous hinge when it's not spec'd for a continuous hinge is one of those things. Another one we run into often is that a door may be sagging or not quite sitting like it's supposed to, so they'll go through and, well, let's just cut the strike so that, hey, the latch will still catch, it'll still close. It was just a little lower than it needed to be. Well, that entire locking mechanism, every single piece is spec'd to work as it came out of the box. The moment you modify it, it no longer meets codes because it has been modified in a manner that has not been tested to be used. So you can't be making modifications in field. Overall, that is the anatomy of a fire door. You have a door leaf, you got a frame. You must have labels on the leaf and the frame that are legible. If they're painted over, try to get it cleaned off. If you can't clean it off, you may need to have everything recertified, unfortunately, or install new components. A coordinator, if you have a double door fire door assembly, a door closer, and some assemblies have fire and smoke seals. Obviously, there are hinges on a fire door. That's got to open and close somehow. Some fire door assemblies are going to have windows in them, and they must be installed properly, not broken or cracked, and they must be sealed all the way around. Seals cannot be broken. Possibly may have a kick plate that's under 16 inches tall. Threshold seals may be spec'd for that particular door. And of course, it must have a lock or latch properly installed and not modified. That is the anatomy of a fire door. Those are the components that work in conjunction with one another when properly installed and not changed or modified to keep people safe, to keep you safe in case of a fire, to keep your building safe, to keep your customers safe, to save lives. And that is why a fire door assembly is there to keep you safe one door at a time. If you have any questions, if you have any topics you'd like for us to discuss, shoot us an email at tarriverlock@gmail.com and we'd be glad to do that. Have yourself a great day.